There is a place in the North Atlantic that most people could not find on a map, that has no traffic lights, that is home to more sheep than people, and that has somehow, against every expectation, become one of the most photographed destinations on Earth. It sits halfway between Norway and Iceland, battered by wind and fog and the kind of cold that gets into your bones before you have stepped fully off the plane, and it looks, depending on the light and the cloud and the time of day, like the opening scene of a Viking saga, a fever dream painted in 50 shades of green, or the end of the world rendered beautiful. The Faroe Islands. 18 islands in the middle of nowhere. And they are extraordinary. Start with what you cannot prepare for, because nobody does. You can look at photographs. You can scroll through Instagram feeds and watch travel videos and read every article ever written about the place, and you will still not be prepared for the moment the plane breaks through the cloud on approach to Vega Airport and the islands appear below you. Black rock and impossibly green grass dropping in sheer cliffs straight into a grey-green sea, the villages of coloured rooftops clinging to the hillsides with an improbable stubbornness, the narrow fjords cutting inland like wounds in the rock. It is a landscape that registers as theatrical before it registers as real. It looks like someone built a film set and forgot to take it down. The Faroe Islands are an autonomous territory of Denmark, a self-governing archipelago of 18 islands with a combined land area of approximately 1,400 square kilometers and a population of around 55,000 people. By any conventional measure of scale, they should barely register. They have no major industry beyond fishing. They have no ancient ruins, no famous museums, no UNESCO World Heritage Sites of the conventional tourist magnet variety. They have no tropical beaches, no warm weather, no guaranteed sunshine. What they have instead is everything else. The landscape is the first thing, and it is enough on its own. The Faroe Islands were formed by volcanic activity and then shaped by glaciation, and the combination has produced a terrain of extreme drama. Basalt cliffs that fall hundreds of meters into the sea, mountain ridges that appear to float above the clouds, valleys so green and so steep that they look painted rather than grown. The grass is that specific luminous green that only happens where rain is plentiful and sun is scarce, a green that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. In summer, when the days are long and the light is low and golden for most of the evening, the islands glow with it. The cliffs of Enniberg on the island of Vidoy are among the highest sea cliffs in the world, dropping 754 meters from the plateau above to the sea below. Standing at their edge and looking down is not a comfortable experience. The wind at the top is not metaphorically strong. It is the kind of wind that requires a decision about how close to the edge you are willing to stand, and that decision is not entirely philosophical. People have been blown off these cliffs. The rock at the bottom is not visible. The sea is. The lake of Sorvagsvatn on the island of Vegar has become one of the most reproduced images in Faroese tourism, and it deserves its fame. The lake sits at the edge of a cliff above the sea, and photographed from a specific angle at a specific point on the approach path, it appears to hang above the ocean, a lake suspended in mid-air over a 100-meter drop, the optical illusion so perfect that photographs of it are still regularly dismissed as digitally manipulated by people who have not visited. The walk to the viewpoint that produces this perspective is about 5 kilometers each way on an unmarked trail across open hillside. In good weather, it is one of the finest short walks in the North Atlantic. In bad weather, which is the more common condition, it is a commitment that requires waterproof everything and a willingness to arrive at the viewpoint looking like you swam there. The villages are the second thing, and they are unlike anything in comparable latitudes. The Faroe Islands have been inhabited since at least the 9th century, when Norse settlers arrived and found, according to some accounts, Irish monks already living there in self-imposed isolation. Those monks had chosen the most remote inhabited place in the North Atlantic to be alone with their god, which says something specific about the atmosphere of the place. The Norse stayed, built their villages on the sheltered shores of the fjords, and developed a culture so isolated by geography and weather that it retained its own language, its own legal traditions, and its own relationship with the sea for over 1,000 years without significant outside interference. Faroese is a North Germanic language descended from Old Norse, closer to Icelandic than to Danish, and it has survived not merely as a folk curiosity but as a living primary language used in everyday life, in government, in schools, in literature, and in music. In a world where minority languages are disappearing at a rate that linguists find alarming, Faroese is one of the success stories, protected partly by the island's isolation and partly by a cultural pride so fierce it became political. The villages themselves are small, tight clusters of coloured houses and grass-roofed buildings arranged around small harbours where the fishing boats come and go. Gjorv, the island of Enniberg, is built around a natural gorge that serves as its harbour, the sea entering through a crack in the cliffs and the village arranged above it on the green hillside, its grass-roofed houses perfectly composed against the basalt backdrop. Saksun on Streymoy sits at the end of a long, winding valley, its handful of turf-roofed houses reflected in a tidal lagoon that fills and empties with the sea, surrounded by mountains on three sides and cut off from the coast by terrain that kept it isolated until a road was finally built in the 20th century. These are not reconstructed heritage villages. People live in them. They have always lived in them. The grass roofs deserve a specific mention because they are not decoration. They are a building technology developed over centuries in a place where timber is scarce, where insulation is essential, and where the landscape itself provides the most effective roofing material available. A Faroe's grass roof is layered. Birch bark for waterproofing, then soil, then grass. The whole assembly so effective at thermal regulation that turf-roofed buildings maintain a more stable internal temperature than most modern construction. The grass grows on the roof the way grass grows on the hillside, wild and unmanaged, dotted with wildflowers in summer, adding the surreal quality that the buildings appear to be growing rather than built. Torshavn is the capital, and it is the smallest capital city in Europe. With a population of around 22,000 people, Torshavn is a city only by the generous application of the term, a harbour town of coloured houses and winding lanes built around a medieval fortress called the Tinganes, a spit of land jutting into the harbour where the Faroes parliament, the Lagting, has met since the Viking-age. The Lagting is one of the oldest parliaments in the world, a fact that the Faroes mention with a quiet pride that does not require amplification. Torshavn has restaurants. It has bars and cafes and a music scene of extraordinary vitality for its size. It has the Nordic House, a cultural centre designed by the Danish architect Jean-Jacques Baruel that hosts concerts, exhibitions and events that reflect the island's position at the crossroads of Nordic cultural traditions. It has the Faroe Islands National Football Stadium, which holds around 6,000 people in a country of 55,000, a ratio that reflects the intensity with which football is pursued here. The national team, which plays on one of the most dramatically situated pitches in European football, has produced results against larger nations that have periodically startled the footballing world. The harbour at Torshavn in the evening, when the fishing boats are tied up and the light is going and the coloured houses along the waterfront are reflected in the still water, is one of those scenes that makes you reach for a camera and then put it away because you know it will not do what you are looking at any justice at all. The weather is the thing that nobody fully warns you about, and it should be discussed with honesty. The Faroe Islands sit at the intersection of the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Current, in a position that produces weather of almost theatrical variability. It can rain on the Faroes every day of the year, and in some years it more or less does. The average annual rainfall is over 1,200 millimeters. The wind is not occasional. It is structural, a permanent feature of the environment that the architecture, the vegetation, and the culture have all adapted to over centuries. Winds strong enough to knock an unprepared person off their feet are not uncommon at exposed viewpoints. Weather forecasting in the islands is complicated by the fact that the terrain creates microclimates on a very local scale so that it can be sunny in Torshavn and raining horizontally in a village 15 kilometers away. This sounds discouraging. It is actually one of the things that makes the islands extraordinary. The light in the Faroes changes faster and more dramatically than almost anywhere else in the world. A morning that begins in fog and grey can produce within an hour light of such extraordinary quality, low and golden and streaming through the clouds in shafts that illuminate the green hillsides and the dark water below. The photographers who have visited describe it as the most challenging and most rewarding light they have ever worked in. The islands are not photogenic despite the weather. They are photogenic because of it. The drama of the landscape is inseparable from the drama of the sky above it. The fog is its own experience. When fog descends on the Faroes, which it does often and quickly, the islands transform. Villages that were visible across the fjord disappear. The cliff edges become invisible. The sound of the sea, already present everywhere, becomes the primary sensory input, and the world contracts to the immediate. The wet grass underfoot, the grey wall of moisture in every direction, the occasional appearance and disappearance of a sheep on the hillside above. It is disorienting and atmospheric and unlike any other travel experience available in Europe. The food is the thing that has changed in the past decade, and the change has been dramatic. The traditional cuisine of the Faroe Islands is built around preservation. Dried fish called skopikjot, fermented mutton called skahoft, dried whale meat that has been a controversial staple of the diet for centuries. These are foods developed by people who needed to store protein through long winters in a place where fresh supplies were seasonal and uncertain. They are acquired tastes in the most literal sense, and visitors are not required to acquire them. Though those who do tend to report an experience that is extreme, challenging, and memorable in ways that a bowl of pasta in a tourist restaurant is not. What has happened alongside this tradition is something different. KOKS, the Faroes fine dining restaurant that earned 2 Michelin stars and was relocated to Greenland in 2022 before returning to the islands, put Faroes cuisine on the international culinary map in a way that changed how the world thought about food from the North Atlantic. The philosophy was New Nordic applied to Faroese ingredients. Fermented, dried, smoked and foraged products elevated by technique and presented with the kind of visual precision and intellectual seriousness that turns a meal into a cultural statement. The ripple effect of that attention has produced a restaurant scene in Torshavn that is, for a capital city of 22,000 people, remarkable in its quality, ambition and rootedness in local ingredients. The puffins are something the internet has discovered, and the internet is not wrong. Atlantic puffins breed on the Faroe Islands in numbers that make the archipelago one of the best places on Earth to observe them. They nest in burrows in the cliff tops, arriving in spring and departing in late summer. And during that window they are present in such concentrations that the cliff edges above certain beaches are simply covered in them. Thousands of birds standing, preening, launching and crash landing with the cheerful incompetence that makes puffins the most immediately endearing seabirds in the North Atlantic. They are not shy in the Faroes. They have not been hunted to a level of wariness. You can sit on a cliff top and have them land within arm's reach, which is the kind of wildlife encounter that requires no photography skill whatsoever and produces photographs that people do not believe were taken without a telephoto lens. The Faroes have traditionally hunted puffins for food, a practice that is legal and culturally embedded. This fact sits in complicated relationship with the tourism industry that the birds have helped generate, a tension the islands are navigating with varying degrees of success, and that visitors encounter in the form of a culture that is neither apologetic about its traditions nor indifferent to the international conversation around them. The Grindadrap is the thing that the world knows about the Faroe Islands, and it deserves direct engagement rather than avoidance. The Grindadrap, or grind, is the traditional Faroese practice of hunting pilot whales in a communal drive that has been practiced on the islands for at least 400 years and possibly considerably longer. When a pod of pilot whales is spotted offshore, a call goes out through the community, boats drive the whales into a bay, and they are killed on the beach in a process that is rapid, involves the entire community, and produces meat and blubber that is distributed without commercial sale among the participants. The practice is not regulated by international bodies because the Faroes are not a member of the International Whaling Commission. It is legal under Faroese law and defended by the Faroese as a cultural tradition and a food source. It is also, when footage of it surfaces internationally, one of the most viscerally disturbing images associated with any European destination, and the annual controversy it generates is real and not manufactured. Sea Shepherd and other conservation organizations have conducted sustained campaigns against it. The Faroese government and the majority of Faroese citizens have consistently defended it. The debate is not resolvable by a travel video, and this script is not attempting to resolve it. What it is worth saying is this: the grind is part of the Faroe Islands in a way that cannot be separated from a full understanding of the place. And any account of the islands that omits it in favor of only the Puffins and the green cliffs is not giving you the complete picture. The question of why you should go, and when, and what to expect. The Faroe Islands are best visited between May and September, when the days are long, the Puffins are present, the hiking trails are accessible, and the weather, while never reliable, is at its most manageable. Atlantic Airways flies to Vágar from Copenhagen, Edinburgh, and a small number of other European cities. Accommodation ranges from the handful of hotels in Torshavn to guest houses in the villages to the increasingly popular Airbnb and farm stay options that put visitors directly into the landscape rather than adjacent to it. The islands are not cheap. They are a Danish territory with Danish price levels, and the cost of food, accommodation, and activities reflects the logistics of supplying a remote archipelago. They are also not large. The entire road network of the Faroes is around 500 kilometers, and a driver could cover a significant portion of the inhabited islands in a single long day, though doing so would miss the point entirely. The Faroes reward slowness. They reward the traveler who stops the car when the light changes and walks to the cliff edge and sits in the wind for a while. They reward the person who accepts bad weather as part of the experience rather than a failure of planning. They are not for everyone. They make no particular effort to be for everyone. And that, more than the cliffs or the puffins or the grass-roofed villages or the light, is what keeps the people who have been there talking about it for years after they leave. There is a photograph that circulates on travel platforms periodically, taken from a hillside above the village of Grindadrap on the island of Vágar. In the foreground, a waterfall drops from the cliff edge directly into the sea 200 meters below. Behind it, the village sits on its ledge above the ocean, a handful of grass-roofed houses arranged around a small harbor. Above it, the mountain rises into cloud. The photograph looks like it was taken on a film set. It was not. That village is real. Those houses are inhabited. That waterfall falls every day, whether anyone is there to photograph it or not. The Faroe Islands have been there for millions of years. They will be there long after the last travel video is made and the last Instagram post is liked and forgotten. What they offer is something that is becoming genuinely rare in a world where every remarkable place has been found, photographed, packaged, and sold. The experience of a landscape that has not yet fully decided what it thinks of you. That keeps its own counsel. That will be magnificent or terrible or both within the space of an afternoon and will not apologize for either. Go when you can. Go prepared. And when the fog comes in and the wind picks up and the cliff edge disappears into grey and you are standing there in the rain wondering what exactly you were thinking, look around at the green and the black and the grey and the sea and understand that you are exactly where you are supposed to be.